They say in media production that if you control the narrative, you control the reality. I've spent 20 years behind the scenes, making mediocre men look like visionaries and turning chaotic events into seamless stories. My name is Winston Keene. I run a media firm in Nashville. I'm the guy who makes sure the lighting is perfect, the audio is crisp, and the message lands exactly where it's supposed to. I thought I had a partnership at home that was just as polished. Priya was my match, sharp, ambitious, and elegant. But at the Meridian rooftop mixer for her firm, Arclight Creative, I realized I wasn't the producer of my own life anymore. I was just an extra in a script I hadn't read. That I arrived late, still carrying the hum of a 10-hour shoot in my bones. The air on the rooftop was cool, smelling of expensive gin and desperate ambition. I spotted Priya near the bar. She was glowing, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, laughing with a man who stood just a little too deep into her personal orbit. That was Zayn Whitfield. Broad-shouldered, expensive teeth, and the kind of unearned confidence that usually comes from a trust fund. "Winston, you finally made it," Priya said, her voice smooth but her eyes already darting back to Zayn. "This is Zayn. He's the lead consultant on the Harlow account." Zayn didn't just shake my hand, he tested it. His grip was a performance. "The podcast guy, right?" he asked, his voice loud enough to pull in the surrounding circle of colleagues. That I smiled. "I prefer media architect, but sure. We tell the stories people actually want to hear." Zayn let out a short, sharp laugh, looking around the room for his audience. "Must be a nice little hobby. Low overhead, right? I guess it's a good gig if you can find anyone actually willing to listen to the filler." The circle went dead quiet. I saw the smirk on his face. He was marking his territory. He was checking to see if I'd bark or bite. I looked at Priya. I expected a defense, a deflection, even a look of disapproval. Instead, she just sipped her martini, her eyes fixed on the city skyline. She didn't blink. She didn't care. That was the moment the smolder became a fire. "You're right, Zayn," I said, keeping my voice low and professional. "It all depends on who's listening. And in my business, we record everything." I walked away. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't throw a punch. I went home, sat in my dark kitchen, and did what I do best. I started a project that I hired Roy Bassett, a private investigator who looks like a tired history teacher but has the soul of a bloodhound. Within 4 days, the narrative began to shift. Roy didn't just find photos of them at a coffee shop on Elliston Place, he found the paper trail. While I was home helping our daughter, Nora, with her math homework, Priya was working late. But the bank statements told a different story. She was siphoning money from our joint account, small, calculated amounts like $800 and $1,200, to an entity called ZW Advisory Group. That I ran the registration. ZW. Zayn Whitfield. The registered agent was his younger brother, Dale. It wasn't just an affair, it was a heist. She was funding his lifestyle with our retirement savings, but the real director's cut came on Thursday night. That I found out through my tech contacts that Zayn was hosting a massive media innovation showcase on Friday evening. He had invited 70 high-net-worth investors, including his father, Gerald Whitfield, a man whose reputation for integrity was the only reason Zayn had a career at all. Zayn needed this showcase to land. It was his make-or-break moment. That I called Felix, a lead AV tech who's worked on my sets for a decade. "Felix," I said, "I need 30 minutes of admin access to the presentation server for the Fifth Avenue venue. I'm not changing the show. I'm just adding a little, local flavor to slide 6. Felix didn't ask questions. He knew Zayn's type. He gave me the credentials. The night of the showcase, I didn't stay home. I put on my best suit, grabbed a fake name badge, and stood at the back of the darkened hall. The room was full of Nashville's elite, men in tailored wool and women in silk, all waiting to be impressed by the visionary Zayn Whitfield. Zayn took the stage like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. He was smooth. He was charismatic. "Slide 1, the vision," he boomed. "Slide 2, market growth." Priya was in the front row, looking at him with the same pride she used to reserve for me. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. In production, timing is everything. If you hit the transition too early, the audience misses the point. If you hit it too late, the momentum is gone. Zayn reached the climax of his speech. And that brings us to the core of our strategy. Slide 6, Strategic Partnerships and Sustainable Growth. He clicked the remote. The screen didn't show a growth chart. It didn't show a logo. It showed a high-resolution, time-stamped photo of Zayn and Priya in a hotel lobby bar, his hand on her thigh, while the caption beneath it read, "Consulting services funded by the Keen Family Savings." Then, the slide auto-transitioned. A screenshot of the ZW Advisory Shell Company registration. Another photo of them entering a guest house while I was at a fire marshal detail for the county. The silence in that room was more deafening than any explosion I've ever recorded. It was the sound of a career evaporating that I watched Zayn turn around. I watched the blood drain from his face as he stared at the 20-foot-tall evidence of his own stupidity. I looked at the front row. Gerald Whitfield, his father, stood up slowly. He didn't look at the screen. He looked at his son with a look of such profound disgust that Zayn actually physically recoiled. Gerald buttoned his jacket and walked out without a word. The investors followed like a receding tide that I caught Priya's eye from the back of the room. I didn't yell. I didn't scowl. I just raised my glass of sparkling water in a silent toast and walked out into the cool Nashville night. The show was over. But the fallout? That was just beginning. The morning after the showcase, Nashville felt different. The air was crisper, the silence in my new apartment more profound. I had moved my things out while Priya was at the event, a tactical maneuver that left her coming home to a half-empty house and a world that had effectively ended. That I was sitting at my desk when the first of 22 missed calls from Priya vibrated across the wood. I didn't answer. In my line of work, you don't talk to the talent when they're having a meltdown on set. You wait for the lawyers to clear the stage. My attorney, Douglas Hull, called at 10 a.m. His voice was as dry as parchment. "Winston, I've just received a call from Stuart Colby. He's representing your wife. Or rather, he's trying to." He sounded like a man trying to catch a falling knife. "What's the word, Doug?" "The Slide 6 incident is the talk of the Nashville business circuit," Doug replied. "Zayn's father has officially pulled all funding from his son's ventures. But more importantly, the ZW Advisory Group documentation we surfaced has triggered a preliminary audit at Priya's firm. They can't have a senior partner linked to shell companies siphoning client-adjacent funds. She's been placed on administrative leave." I felt a grim satisfaction. It wasn't about the affair anymore, it was about the integrity of the life we had built. Or the life I thought we had built. That Sunday, I agreed to meet Priya. Not at the house, but at Centennial Park. Neutral ground. No cameras, no audience, just the two people who had once promised to grow old together. She looked different. The public consumption version of Priya, the polished, untouchable executive, was gone. Her hair was pulled back messily, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She didn't look like a woman who had understood the geometry of the room. She looked like someone who had been caught in the wreckage. "Why, Winston?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You destroyed him. You destroyed my career. Was it worth it?" I looked at the Parthenon in the distance, thinking about how many things in this world are just hollow replicas of something grander. "I didn't destroy anything, Priya," I said calmly. "I just stopped editing the footage. I let the raw files play out for everyone to see. You and Zayn were the ones who wrote the script. I just provided the screen." "It was just a mistake," she whispered. "Zayn, he made me feel like I was more than just a mother and a wife. He made me feel powerful." "Powerful?" I asked. "You were stealing from Jonah and Nora's future to pay for a man's ego. That's not power. That's a fire. And as a professional, I couldn't let it spread." She started to cry then, real, ugly tears. She told me Zayn had blocked her number that morning. His father had cut him off, and without his father's money, Zayn was already looking for his next mark. He didn't want a partner, he wanted a patron that I handed her a manila folder. These are the divorce papers. Doug has already frozen the remaining joint assets. We're filing for a 70/30th split based on asset dissipation, the $19,000 you funneled to ZW Advisory. And I'm seeking primary custody. Her head snapped up. You can't take the kids. I'm not taking them. I'm protecting them. The school records from the last year show I was at every game, every recital, every doctor's visit while you were consulting with Zayn. The court values presence over vision, Priya. She looked at the papers like they were a death warrant. In a way, they were. The version of her life she had curated was dead. The next few months were a blur of depositions and data. The defamation suit I filed against Zayn never made it to court. His lawyers settled the moment we produced the emails showing he had reached out to my sponsors to sabotage my business. He used what was left of his dwindling savings to buy my silence. I took that money and put it directly into a trust for the kids. The final burn happened in December. I received a notification that the Meridian rooftop, the site where the foundation first shifted, was being rebranded. The new owners wanted a brand storytelling video to launch their grand opening. I took the job. I stood on that same rooftop with my crew, the lights perfectly positioned, the audio crisp. I looked at the spot where Zayn had called me a speed bump. I looked at the bar where Priya had stood in silence. I directed the shoot with a precision I'd never felt before. I made the city look like a place of infinite possibility. Because for me, it was as we packed up the gear, my lead tech, Felix, walked over. Looks good, boss. Best work yet. What's the title of the project? I looked out at the Nashville skyline, the cold, clean lights of a city that was moving on, just like I was. I thought about my kids waiting for me at our new apartment, about the quiet house with the crooked chimney Nora had drawn for me. Title it, The Clear View. I said. I walked to my truck, the weight of the past 2 decades finally lifting. I wasn't just a producer anymore. I was the protagonist of a story that finally made sense. I drove home to my children, leaving the rooftop and the shadows of Arclight Creative behind. The credits were rolling on that chapter of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the sequel.